Hey there, I'm Stephen Romo in tonight for Gadi Schwartz. And right now, more than 90 million people are in the path of a winter storm as it makes its way across the country. From northern Kentucky to the mid-Atlantic, weather alerts are already in effect as this icy blast packs extreme cold and travel advisories. We'll have full team coverage with the latest. Plus, Elon Musk in the Oval Office doubling down on his latest plans for federal cuts and what it means for the future of the government. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez will join us with more. And President Trump met with the King of Jordan, who appears to need some more convincing on the plan for Palestinians' future. What he's agreed to and what he hasn't, that's coming up. Those are just some of the stories we're following, and there is a lot more to unpack tonight. So let's get started, because this is Stay Tuned Now. Well, winter is proving to be far from over, with back-to-back storms rolling across parts of the country this week. Right now, 90 million people under winter alerts from the Midwest to the Northeast. Conditions could be life-threatening as the first storm packs a combination of heavy snow, freezing rain, and below-average temperatures. Virginia already declared a state of emergency. Places like Kentucky are buried under inches of snow. Up to 6 inches could fall there. Arkansas is looking like an icy wonderland. Power lines, fences, trees all frozen. Not very wonderland in that regard. Still, this is just the beginning. After the storm wraps up, another one is right behind it. But wait, there's more. The same storms are dumping heavy rain across the southeast and increasing the threat of tornadoes. There's already been at least one possible tornado spotted in Florida. Flooding will also be a concern from eastern Texas up to Kentucky. And another storm is expected to impact the West Coast over the next couple days. That could trigger dangerous flooding near vulnerable burn scars in Southern California. An evacuation order has already been issued for burn scar areas near Santa Barbara ahead of that storm. Don't fret, though. We have our team tracking it all for us tonight. Bill Karen standing by with the forecast. But first, let's go to Sam Brock in Washington, D.C. So, Sam, D.C. is under a winter storm warning. What impacts are you seeing from the storm there?
Sure, Stephen. Good evening. D.C. is awash right now in snow. We're looking at several inches so far. It's been going at this rate for at least the last several hours, Stephen. And honestly, the projections right now, 4 to 6 inches total. If D.C. hits that mark, it would be the most amount of snow that the region has seen in February in about a decade. And this feels like deja vu a little bit. It kind of is, because we were here about a month and a half ago, and it was a very similar situation, a half a foot or so of snow. The area not necessarily accustomed to that. There are ripple effects when you're discussing snow on roadways, where you have a lot of people certainly trying to go to school here, a lot of federal workers trying to get to work, a lot of essential personnel that are critical to government that have to go to and from their place of work, regardless of what's going on, irrespective of the weather. So a confluence of factors there. We've already seen a number of large school systems cancel classes for tomorrow. That's Arlington, Loudoun County, Montgomery County in Maryland. No word on D.C. just yet in terms of tomorrow's classes, but we did get the opportunity today to talk to teachers and parents about what they are experiencing and what this means for trying to schedule their lives and their kids' situations as well. Here's what they told us. How does that affect families? You know, you said you have a son in school.
I mean, if I have to work, I still got to bring, I have to find somewhere for him to go, and that could be complicated.
Are you worried at all about your safety?
I just think it's kind of hard, especially with like parents going back into the office now. Most kids need to take the bus home. So I think the snow could cause a little bit of a problem, especially for people taking transportation.
Public transportation.
Yeah.
The roads, are certainly such a concern, Stephen, that there was pre-treatment by the Virginia Department of Transportation. We talked to VDOT earlier today. They're doing that 48 hours out with this briny mix. And then you're seeing a constant parade of salt trucks and snow plows. In fact, that's the only reason that a major road behind me, Connecticut Avenue or Nebraska, it's one of the two, I'm not sure which, where you're seeing clear roadways right now. It's because of the fact you've had plows coming through with regularity. But there's enough snow coming down at a fast enough rate that's going to be covered within, 10, 15, 20-minute intervals. It's got to be plowed all over again. This could go on well into the night, Stephen.
Another reason to be grateful for those municipal workers. And you mentioned the confluence of events here, Sam. There's always concern with these types of storms. And we've got this extra layer with this one now, another storm right behind this one. What impacts could we see because of that one?
So it's always this freeze, melts, refreeze scenario when you're talking about big, congested, well-populated areas and the roads. That's one of them. And the other is for a lot of these parents, it could very well mean their kids aren't going to be going back to school for a week, right? There is a cumulative effect here. And just when you think you have a window and a chance to breathe, they find out they got to figure out plans all over again. So look, from a number of different vantage points, there's going to be an issue when you're talking about a repeated storm situation, one after the other. I mean, in this case, and I know Bill is going to speak to this in a second, it's all over the country. It's not just the mid-Atlantic, but a lot of people no doubt feeling storm fatigue tonight, Stephen.
A lot going on. Sam Brock, thanks so much. Hope you get to enjoy some rest. And we always have to say some hot chocolate because you're out there in that cold weather. We appreciate all the reporting you're doing.
And I love hot chocolate.
Oh, there you go. Sign it up. All right, let's bring in NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns for more on this. This storm already causing a lot of fallout. What are you looking at for this one?
Yeah, we've had so much. That tornado that happened outside of Pensacola, just north of there earlier today. And then, we have cars that are stranded around the Beltway in D.C. because of this snow event. So this is just part one of a very just incredibly active weather pattern. We got freezing rain event going on in the Appalachians. This will quickly move out. The heaviest snow is right now from about D.C. heading down to areas of southern Maryland, southern Delaware, southern New Jersey is going to get into it. Philadelphia northwards, very light, not really a big deal. So we'll call it another 2 inches in D.C. You'll probably end up about 6 inches or so. Atlantic City to Dover, locally another 4 to 6 is possible. And now this is what we're dealing with tomorrow. So it's already starting to snow a little bit in Kansas, but it's going to snow hard tomorrow in Kansas City. It's going to move through Iowa. It's going to head up through Peoria. Chicago's going to get a piece of this. Milwaukee, too. Isolated areas up to 10 inches. But Kansas City, about 4 to 6. Chicago, about 4 to 6 for you. And even Detroit, your forecast has gotten worse. We're now thinking you have a chance for 4 to 6. And that tornado threat today was kind of unexpected. Tomorrow, we think we have a more chance for organized severe weather. And this is going to be from New Orleans to Jackson, Birmingham, Montgomery, all included in this. So this is areas that you're familiar with this time of year. Then when we get to February and March, we have to watch the areas of the South.
All right, Bill, I wanted to ask you about the evacuation warnings we're already seeing pop up for these burn scar areas in Southern California. What's it looking like there?
Yeah, we're going to see more of these, too. So this first evacuation order was for the lake fire. And you may be like, hey, I don't remember the lake fire. That was back in August in Santa Barbara County. So that was just the beginning. We're going to have new warnings that will go up and new evacuation orders as we go throughout the next 24 hours. And the reason is a slow-moving storm is going to come through. This is going to bring significant rain, the heaviest rain ever since we had those fires right after the beginning of January. And we had a couple that gave like a half an inch to an inch. This could be as much as 3 to 6 inches. So you think about a hillside that's been burned. There's no trees. There's no grass anymore. All those roots are dead. And so there's nothing to hold all that mud in place. And that's why we've issued a moderate risk here of flash flooding. This means significant flooding is expected. They have barriers that are up. They're expecting hillsides to give way. And they're just hoping that new homes and new lives aren't threatened. They've already told people, no more coming back to the burn areas. People had passes from towns, if they could go up to their property and sort through stuff or get rid of stuff or clean up. They're not letting them do that over the next couple of days because they're concerned with these mudslides. So about 1 to 3 for the valleys, up to 6 to 10 in the mountains. I mean, that's a lot of rain. Other areas of California will get significant rain too here, but it's those burn scars. That's going to be Thursday. So it's scary, right? So these people survived the fire with their homes. And now we could see more devastation.
Yeah, too much trouble for that part of the country. All right, Bill Cairns, thanks so much. All right, turning to some breaking news now. President Trump has officially fired the Inspector General at USAID. The firing of Paul Martin comes a day after his office released a report detailing the negative impact of the Trump administration's downsizing the agency, according to a letter obtained by NBC News. Martin had served as Inspector General since 2023 and was notified of his firing via email. The White House did not respond to a request for comment. Well, the Trump agenda has been moving full steam ahead for 3 weeks now, but already multiple legal roadblocks are mounting. Today, a federal judge ordered health agencies to restore CDC and FDA web pages and health data that were taken down. It's just the latest court order that questions the legality of several of Trump's initiatives. But in response, the White House remains as defiant as ever. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
Tonight, tech titan Elon Musk with his young son in the Oval Office.
If we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt.
Defending his aggressive push to downsize the federal government.
If you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have?
But the leader of President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, the wealthiest man in the world whose businesses have massive federal contracts, was also pressed about potential conflicts of interest.
All of our actions are fully public. I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something.
Following criticism from Musk, the Department of Homeland Security today firing several FEMA workers, accusing them of circumventing leadership by using taxpayer money to pay for New York City hotels for migrants.
The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
But Musk was pressed about what Democrats call a hostile takeover of government.
You couldn't ask for a stronger mandate. The people voted for major government reform. And that's what people are going to get.
Democrats also argue a constitutional showdown may be brewing as the Trump administration faces mounting legal challenges over its cost-cutting moves.
Public employees who serve this country well. You should be respected, not rejected.
Over the past week, judges have temporarily hit the brakes on President Trump's freezing of some federal spending, which was challenged by several blue states, and offering federal workers buyouts opposed by some unions.
And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is corrupt. And it is.
Today, Vice President J.D. Vance in Paris after suggesting judges aren't allowed to control the president's legitimate power, setting up a new battle over presidential authority.
The issue here isn't the courts trying to control the president. It's the president trying to control the law.
I agree wholeheartedly with Vice President J.D. Vance. What DOGE is doing is making sure that your taxpayer dollars, all of us, are spent in the way that they're intended to be spent.
President Trump tonight.
Maybe we have to look at the judges. I think it's a very serious violation.
Saying he'll follow court rulings.
I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it.
All right, let's bring in Gabe here. Now, like you said in your piece, Gabe, Democrats are saying a constitutional showdown could be brewing, but are they actually doing anything about it? Is there anything they can do?
Well, hello, Stephen, from a snowy White House north on. Look, Democrats are trying to mount political opposition, and you're seeing them hold rallies each day opposing President Trump and Elon Musk. Civil rights groups are filing a flurry of lawsuits trying to bog down the administration from carrying out its sweeping changes to the federal workforce, but the White House doesn't seem fazed by all of it, Stephen.
Gabe, if the White House does end up ignoring these court rulings, could any of this actually end up in front of the Supreme Court, and would that even end up mattering?
Well, Stephen, today the president said that he would abide by the court rulings, but that he would also appeal them. And as we mentioned, the vice president suggested that courts aren't allowed to get in the way of the president's legitimate power. Yes, some of these legal battles will likely end up in the Supreme Court. Now, what would happen if the Trump administration were to ignore a Supreme Court ruling? Well, we'd be in uncharted waters, but we're not quite there yet, Stephen.
All right, I don't like that yet, but we'll see what happens. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, thanks so much. Well, the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement could be on the verge of collapse. Today, Israel's prime minister threatening to resume the fighting in Gaza unless they release a new batch of hostages by noon Saturday. Netanyahu also doubled down on an order he gave yesterday to reinforce troops in and around Gaza. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Trump sat down with the King of Jordan and insisted that the U.S. had the right to take Gaza. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has more from Washington.
Jordan's King Abdullah at the White House after President Trump threatened to cut off aid to Jordan if the king doesn't take in Palestinians from Gaza, which Jordan has opposed. King Abdullah offering instead to take in thousands of sick children from Gaza.
I think
One of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in a very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible.
That's really a beautiful gesture. That's really good, and we appreciate it.
The president also doubling down on his plan to own Gaza and rebuild it.
We're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it, and we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace, and there's not going to be any problem. I can tell you about real estate. They're going to be in love with it.
King Abdullah saying Egypt will present a plan in response to the president's, who then suggested he won't withhold aid to either country.
I don't have to threaten with money. We contribute a lot of money to Jordan and to Egypt, by the way, a lot, to both. But I don't have to threaten that. I think we're above that.
Meanwhile, President Trump also doubling down on his threat to Hamas after seeing how emaciated 3 Israeli hostages were when they were released last week.
They look like Holocaust survivors.
The president repeated his demand that Hamas not just release a few hostages this week, but all of them by noon Saturday.
They either have them out by Saturday at 12 o'clock or all bets are off.
Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu has put his troops on alert along the Gaza border, saying if Hamas does not live up to their end of the hostage deal on Saturday, Israel will resume intensive combat operations.
Joining us now is Brian Katulis. He's a senior fellow for U.S. foreign policy at the Middle East Institute. Brian, thanks for being here. So realistically and strategically, can the U.S. afford to block funding to Jordan or Egypt if they don't go along with these Trump plans?
Not likely. We could do it, but it would cut off our nose to spite our face. It would undermine a lot of the security cooperation that we have with Jordan, which is essential in the fight against terrorists like ISIS. Egypt plays an important role as well. As we see, I think, from some of the remarks that were made in the press conference that President Trump and King Abdullah did today, seems that President Trump likely walked that back. That's not surprising because Jordan and support for Jordan has pretty strong bipartisan support in Congress, and it's been a mainstay of U.S. policy in the region to work closely with Jordan. So I think we went through one of those very familiar Trump-like episodes where he says provocative things, but then not much actually really happens. And there weren't many big results, except for the fact that many in the media focused on his ridiculous statements. And it hasn't yet produced sort of progress towards calming the region or a pathway to a long-term peace in the region either.
Yeah, it's so hard to parse, right, what Trump will actually do or what he's just saying. And on that topic, the Egyptian government just announced that they want a comprehensive plan to rebuild Gaza, quote, in a manner that ensures the Palestinian people remain in their homeland. So what could that look like? And what's the likelihood Trump would get on board with a plan that is completely opposite of what he's saying now?
Well, what that plan could look like is something that the Arab world has been talking about for quite some time, especially since the war started between Israel and Hamas in October of 2023. Not just Egypt, but Saudi Arabia and other countries have essentially outlined plans for what they see as an essential two-state solution to the end of that conflict. The problem with that is that many in the current Israeli government actually reject that. They deny the rights of Palestinians to stay in places like Gaza and the West Bank. Some in this current Israeli government want to annex parts of the Palestinian territories in the West Bank as well. Trump's recent statements seem to hint that he leans towards the direction of those in the Israeli government. But the challenge with all of that is it isolates Trump and some in Israel from the basic consensus that exists in the Arab world, which is that there needs to be a two-state solution. So we'll see how this plays out. Egypt's planning to have a summit at the end of this month that tries to unify the position of not just Egypt and Jordan, but some of the Arab countries. And Secretary of State Rubio, I understand, is going to the region. So I think what we're going to see here is yet another episode of Trump blathering on about things that actually don't have much connection to reality. And then the real game plan will be written in the region itself.
Certainly something to see what will be walked back, what actually ends up taking place here. Brian Katulis, thanks so much for breaking that down for us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now to a new development in a story we've been following closely here on Stay Tuned Now. The FBI says it discovered more than 2,000 new files related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. While the agency did not say what's actually in those files, this could be a monumental step toward uncovering what we don't know. This comes after Trump's executive order calling to declassify all remaining documents related to JFK, RFK, and MLK Jr. Joining me now to discuss this update is Jeff Morley. He's the editor of the JFK Files blog. Jeff, I got to tell you, I'm from Dallas. My great-grandmother was actually in Dealey Plaza on that day in 1963. So I've been paying a lot of attention to this. I've heard you speak before about how the CIA may have a lot of files that you're interested in. But how significant do you think this discovery is from the FBI?
I think it's highly significant. It's a big body of records, 2,400 records, 14,000 pages. Not a lot of detail about what they might concern, but we know from the past what the FBI would consider to be assassination related. So we can have a pretty good guess about where these files are coming from and what they might cover.
What do you think about those CIA files that I've heard you mention before? Do you think this executive order will end up bringing those about as well?
The good thing about the FBI order is the FBI went out, searched their records in a good faith effort and said, we found assassination-related records. We're making them available. We want them to be released under the president's order. The CIA needs to do the same thing. You know, we have a body of records that are at the National Archives, and those are important, and those are clearly covered by the president's record. But what the FBI is saying is there's records in possession of the federal government relevant to JFK's assassination that are not yet at the archives. And we're going to put our records in the archives. So the CIA needs to do the same thing. These are important records about CIA and FBI operations in the fall of 1963, right before and right after President Kennedy's assassination. We can be sure of that. So let's have the records.
What do you think this discovery of the 2,000 FBI files tells us about the effectiveness of Trump's executive order?
Well, it's a good thing that the FBI went out and searched their records. And apparently they went and they've updated their record-keeping systems. They have more sophisticated methods of keeping track of old records. So, you know, that's good. In order to understand what we're going to learn in the near future, we need to understand what has been released in the recent past. And what we've learned in recent years is the CIA and the FBI had Lee Harvey Oswald under close surveillance for 4 years before President Kennedy was killed. This isn't a matter of doubt, and it's not a conspiracy theory. It's plain fact. So what's the explanation? And let's have all the records. So we're getting to the end of the game, but the implementation of Trump's order, that's really the important unanswered question right now. Will the government be able to actually force these secretive agencies, FBI and CIA, to release these records? I hope we're there.
Interesting. We'll see what happens here. An executive order asking for it to happen seems like one of the highest steps you could actually get toward getting there. Jeff, I know you followed this closely and will continue to do so. Thanks so much for spending some time explaining this to us.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Of course. All right, here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. A man says he was drugged, robbed, and left for dead by the same woman accused in the death of reporter Edan Manzano. That happened in New Orleans last week. Well, back in October, Danette Colbert was convicted of charges including fraud and theft. David Butler, a victim in that case, shared with NBC News a statement he gave the court saying she should have gotten the maximum sentence due to her disregard for others. He said he was concerned she would do the same thing again, which is what authorities are now alleging happened to Manzano. Colbert's attorneys and the judge who presided in Butler's case did not comment. Steve Bannon pleaded guilty in New York today. He pleads guilty here for a felony count of defrauding donors who gave money to build a wall at the U.S.-Mexico border. In exchange, he agreed to conditional discharge for 3 years. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is changing the name of Fort Liberty back to Fort Bragg again. The Biden administration renamed the base 2 years ago as part of an effort to remove names that honor Confederate leaders. The Pentagon is now stressing that Fort Bragg is named after the World War II hero and not the well-known Confederate general. A recall alert for a canned tuna brand found in major grocery stores like Trader Joe's and Walmart. The FDA says Tri-Union Seafoods is issuing that voluntary recall on some products over a defective pull tab that could potentially lead to botulism, food poisoning, which can be fatal. As of now, there are no reports of illnesses linked with that product. And it is getting so crazy right now. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter Tour pre-sale tickets are now live on Ticketmaster. The 35-time Grammy Award winner's tour is set for April to July of this year, and she will be touring across the cities in the United States and in Europe. I'm sure those tickets will go so fast. Well, don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, new lawsuits detailing horrific abuse inside youth detention facilities. Plus, we just got new surveillance footage of a plane collision at an Arizona airport that left one person dead. That's all ahead, so stay tuned. Welcome back. A new set of lawsuits have been filed against the state of Illinois alleging child sexual abuse while in custody at a number of youth detention centers in the state. Since last year, around 800 survivors have come forward to sue state-run facilities for alleged abuse they say span the past 2 decades. NBC's Adrian Broaddus has the details.
We're talking about alleged abuse that spanned at least 3 decades, dating back to 1996. And the most recent case, according to attorneys, happened in 2023. Attorneys filed a complaint on Monday on behalf of 133 alleged sexual abuse victims. Now they say they have at least 800 people who have sued since last year. And that is according to the attorneys who allege these folks were abused as minors. Now they're adults speaking out, but 91% of them were young men when these alleged crimes happened. Some of them now have their own children describing in detail what happened to them. Take a listen.
In 2005, when I was just 17 years old, I was in my cell when the correctional officer who was supposed to protect and supervise me and the other kids assaulted me. He held me down and covered my mouth so I couldn't call for help. He sexually assaulted me. During the whole time he was sexually assaulting me, I was terrified and powerless. No one should have to experience abuse from those who are given authority over them. What happened to me wasn't just a violation of my policy, it was a violation of my human dignity and rights. I'm speaking up because I want accountability, and because I want to help prevent this from happening to others.
And attorneys representing these alleged victims say the abuse happened in showers, cells, and sometimes their bedrooms. They also say the alleged abuser threatened violence or harsher punishment for these people to keep their silence. Now, some of the alleged abusers, according to attorneys, are still employed by the state or at the county level. In previous cases, the state did file a motion to dismiss some of these cases. A hearing will be held for that later this month. I do want to share a statement that we received from one of the detention centers saying, in part, all allegations of staff misconduct are immediately and thoroughly investigated internally and often in partnership with the Department of Corrections, the Illinois State Police, and the Department of Children and Family Services. They went on to say IDJJ has enacted policies and protocols to ensure safety of youth and staff, as well as identify any possible instances of abuse or misconduct. So this legal battle now continues. Back to you.
All right, we know you'll stay on top of that for us, Adrian. Thanks. Well, coming up, a parent is accused of pushing 2 teenage hockey referees during a youth game in Seattle, and it was all caught on camera. We'll show you what happened next. But first, you got to see this one. Who says you need long arms to paddleboard? Not this guy. This was a T-Rex sighting down in Florida, and wow, that guy is cruising. His massive tail and tiny arms did not hold him back for this, so you should not let anything hold you back for the rest of this week. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Tonight, the NTSB is looking into the moment that a business jet crashed into a parked plane at an Arizona airport, killing one person. And we have new video of that moment. You can see the jet hit the runway and start sliding. You can see the cloud of smoke there as well. Then it kind of veers off and ends up crashing into that parked plane. The private jet that hit the plane actually belongs to Vince Neil, the lead singer of the rock band Motley Crue. His representatives say he was not on board. The crash is just the latest in a wave of major aviation incidents here in the U.S. in the last few weeks. At the end of last month, there was a crash over the Potomac in D.C., killing all 67 people on board the two aircraft involved. Just a few days later, 7 people died after a plane crashed near a Philly mall. And 5 days ago, 10 people were killed after a plane crashed in Alaska. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin joins me now from Scottsdale, Arizona, with more on this. So, Dana, what exactly happened here? What do we know about this?
You know, Stephen, at this point, we are hearing from airport officials that this may have been some sort of malfunction with the main left landing gear. And we know that because part of that landing gear was sitting on the runway behind us, and we can kind of show you a little bit more of the scene because those 2 planes involved in this crash are still here. You can see the one on the right side. That's that larger Gulfstream jet that was already parked. And then to the left, that is the plane of Vince Neil. And you can see just how shredded it is. You can see the inside of the plane. So it just goes to show how violent of a crash this was. Investigators have not revealed the identity of the person who died. And it's just obviously a very sad situation, especially when you consider all the other major aviation disasters that have happened over the last 2 weeks. Stephen?
Yeah, they certainly have a spotlight on them now, for Dana, that's for sure. And the name here, Vince Neil, that certainly raises a lot of attention. His reps say he was not on board the plane at the time. Do we know who was on board?
Yeah, we do, because of a since deleted Instagram post from the Motley Crue Instagram account where he said, a representative said, or someone who operates the social media account posted that it was Neil's girlfriend, Rain, a friend, and 2 pilots. Now, the FAA has confirmed that 4 people were on his plane and that 1 person was on the plane that was parked. Again, officials have not identified who exactly died in that case, but that post made it seem like the girlfriend and the friend were the 2 that were rushed to the hospital. It's unclear of the exact conditions of those 2 pilots that allegedly were also on board. Also, there was another statement released from a representative for Neil, and I want to read part of that. It goes on to say that Mr. Neil's thoughts and prayers go out to everyone involved, and he is grateful for the critical aid of all first responders. And we heard from first responders yesterday. They talked about the effort to try to get the people off the plane and to the hospitals. At one point, someone had to be extricated from one of those planes. So obviously a very, very tough situation. At one point, they had to close down this airport, telling planes to keep going because of the emergency that was unfolding here. Stephen?
Scary stuff for all involved. Dana Griffin, thanks so much. We're getting our first look tonight at some video showing a Seattle youth hockey game that ended in a bit of a fight. The video, shot by a 12-year-old girl, showing a player's father walking onto the ice before pushing 2 teenage referees to the ground. That parent now potentially facing charges. NBC's Morgan Chesky has more.
Tonight, the father you see here facing assault charges for walking onto the ice in the middle of a youth hockey game and shoving 13 and 14-year-old referees to the ground in a violent outburst.
In my 40-plus years of hockey, I've never seen anything as disgusting and repulsive as what this parent did on the ice.
Seattle police say they're also looking at this angle of the incident, which shows the father walking onto the ice while play was stopped. 12-year-old players looking on as he shoves the refs. The crowd gasping as the man walks away, while one ref holds his hip in pain. Refs typically do wear less padding than the players.
It's hard. It hurts. It's pretty similar to dropping onto concrete.
One of the teen refs complaining of pain to his rear right hip and neck, which he said felt stiff, according to a police report. The other experiencing pain in his right elbow. The father, whose name was redacted in the report, was arrested shortly after leaving the venue. Police say he told them he acted in defense of his son, who he says was punched and kicked by an opposing player, while the referees did not intervene.
Adversity teaches a lot of great life lessons. When you interject as a parent and try and assist your kid through adversity, you're not helping, you're hurting.
For hockey parents, Jennifer and Kyle, who frequent the Iceplex, the incident leaving both in shock.
Terrified and appalled, like so disgusting. And it feels extremely disappointing that that happened.
That father has since been banned from league facilities and events until an investigation is completed. The Iceplex where this occurred, also the official practice facility and headquarters for the city's NHL team, the Kraken. The Iceplex saying in a statement in part, there is absolutely no place in hockey or any sport for the behavior that occurred on Sunday.
It is a place for the kids to come out and have a great time, enjoy their friends, enjoy the game that we all love, and just take a deep breath. Everything's going to be fine. Your kid's going to be okay.
Morgan Chesky reporting there. And here are some of the stories that we're following from out west. That is Deb Haaland. She's the former Interior Secretary under Biden. She just launched her campaign for governor of New Mexico. Now, if elected, she'd be the first Native American woman governor of a state. She's hoping to replace Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, who's approaching the end of her two-term limit. In California, a 17-year-old is using AI to detect wildfires. Ryan Honery he first thought of this when he was just 10 years old. Well, he's now using AI to monitor infrared sensors and search for heat sources. He's working with the Orange County Fire Authority to try to improve their fire detection. And speaking of the California wildfires, a massive fundraiser is making a big impact. We're talking $250 million worth. GoFundMe says that's more than all natural disaster donations last year combined. Over 1 million people from all 50 states and over 100 countries have pitched in. Well, coming up, the Paris AI Summit. Vice President J.D. Vance says excessive regulation could end up killing artificial intelligence. We're taking a closer look next, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, it's not exactly Kendrick versus Drake, at least not yet, but relations with our friendly neighbors to the north seem to be growing less friendly by the day. With an escalating trade war and Trump even talking about making Canada the 51st state, Canadians are paying attention, and they are not really taking this lightly. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin reports.
Canadians are getting fired up and fed up with what they're hearing from the U.S. Talk of war on social media.
America doesn't know the same thing that Canada is hearing.
Did you vote to go to war, like actual war with Canada?
You've been a real star-spangled pain in my ass, but at least you're bringing Canadians together.
After President Trump confirms he's not messing around.
Is it a real thing? Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state.
Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau isn't laughing off the 51st state talk, taking it far more seriously when he thinks the cameras are off, caught on a hot mic.
Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing. In my conversation with him.
Even though publicly he's focusing on the tariff threat.
We should be doing more together, not fighting with each other, but Canadians will stand up strongly and firmly if we need to.
Canadians are listening and acting, from small acts of protest like booing the Stars and Stripes from their sports to ours. Talk of boycotting U.S. goods.
We've had an insane couple of weeks. Canadians are putting their money where their mouths are.
At the Province of Canada store in Toronto, owner Julie Brown tells me people aren't fans of this rhetoric from the president.
When you hear the U.S. president talking about Canada as the 51st state, how does that make you feel?
I don't like it. I don't think any Canadians like it. I think we're very happy in Canada. We're very happy with how things are run here, and we have no interest in that.
Potentially even a political impact, because while there's no specific numbers testing how Canadians feel about the U.S. right now, polls suggest a shift after the unpopular Trudeau's announcement.
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister, after the party selects its next leader.
And Trump's inauguration, swinging away from the rival Conservative Party back to the Liberals over the last month, ahead of October's election. Because even as the president's top advisors try to bring down the temperature to our own Kristen Welker.
Is he planning to annex Canada?
Policy.
Well, I don't think there's any plans to invade Canada, if that's what you're talking about.
Up north, the fear is real and just heating up.
Aaron McLaughlin, thanks for that report. Well, all types of AI-related issues have been talked about in Paris this week as part of a major artificial intelligence summit taking place there. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance on his first overseas trip with a message that too much regulation could crush an industry that is just taking off. And while a number of countries have signed on to an international agreement on AI, the UK and the US have not. Meanwhile, on the sidelines of that summit, drama between tech titans Elon Musk and Sam Altman took center stage. Brian Chung has that story.
Vice President J.D. Vance on the world stage today, sharing his vision of an America First agenda on artificial intelligence.
The United States of America is the leader in AI, and our administration plans to keep it that way.
But offstage, a more personal, escalating battle for AI supremacy. Elon Musk making a $97 billion offer to take ChatGPT maker OpenAI from its CEO Sam Altman, who Musk has called Scam Altman and a swindler. Altman punching back, offering to buy Twitter from Musk, and today at the AI summit in Paris saying,
probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy.
The growing public feud, now a major falling out between the two tech billionaires who co-founded OpenAI together in 2015.
I think we've got a really talented group at OpenAI
who are unusually fearless and willing to go in the face of other people telling you something is crazy.
But now Musk company XAI is a competitor to Altman's OpenAI.
I mean, look, OpenAI is not for sale.
The two are also fighting in court after Musk sued Altman and OpenAI, alleging that they double-crossed him on a promise to keep the company a nonprofit. OpenAI saying they need to become a for-profit company to raise money. Caught in the middle, President Donald Trump, close with Musk, but also heaping praise on Altman at a recent White House event.
I would say by far the leading expert, based on everything I read, Sam Altman.
A former friendship gone foul, with the future of AI hanging in the balance.
And one more wrinkle to the Sam Altman and Elon Musk feud are allegations of funny money. So as Elon Musk builds a consortium of investors to try to fundraise that $100 billion or so he says he would use to buy OpenAI, you have Sam Altman, who was in the White House only a few weeks ago alongside representatives at Oracle and also the Japanese-based SoftBank, making a $500 billion commitment to a project called Stargate, which would invest in AI infrastructure here in the United States. Elon Musk saying at the time that Sam Altman didn't have the money. Certainly big allegations among these billionaires with hundreds of billions of dollars at stake in this AI race. Stephen?
Joining me now is Garrett DeVink, a tech reporter for The Washington Post, with more on this. Garrett, welcome to you. So the board of OpenAI is saying it has not received an official offer from Elon Musk, and we know Sam Altman has already said no thanks to that. So how do you see this feud playing out in the coming days or weeks?
Yeah, I think a big question for us was, now that Elon Musk is so close to Donald Trump, whether that would be majorly problematic for OpenAI. But actually on the first full day of Trump's presidency, he had Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, at the White House to announce, a major investment in AI data centers. And so for now, this is a feud between, two tech titans, both of them very powerful. Musk obviously closer to the president than Sam Altman. But at this point, that doesn't necessarily seem to be harming OpenAI directly.
And at the Paris AI Summit, the U.S. and the U.K. are the only countries that did not sign a pledge for an inclusive and sustainable approach to AI. Those two countries account for more than 60% of the world's AI startups right now. So does this agreement have any real teeth without the U.S. in them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, these agreements are often just things that, the leaders sign to sort of generally be on the same page. None of this is binding. And I think, the words you mentioned there, inclusive, sustainable, these are not words that Donald Trump or his administration really like to be associated with. I think that's partly why they didn't sign this. Donald Trump and his administration, it's quite unclear exactly what their specific AI policy is, but what we do know for sure is that they do not want any kind of regulation. The previous administration didn't really have any AI regulation either, but they were a little bit more open to sort of talking about the downsides and risks of AI. And here with Trump and J.D. Vance, it's very clear that they just say anything that smells of any kind of restriction or rule related to AI, we don't want it.
Interesting. And on the subject of the Trump administration, during his speech, Vice President Vance took aim at authoritarianism and warned countries about partnering with authoritarian regimes. Let's watch.
We feel very strongly that AI must remain free from ideological bias and that American AI will not be co-opted into a tool for authoritarian censorship. Some authoritarian regimes have stolen and used AI to strengthen their military, intelligence, and surveillance capabilities, capture foreign data, and create propaganda to undermine other nations' national security.
So he's not naming who these regimes are, but what do you make of that message?
Yeah, I mean, he's very obviously talking about China, and you know, the U.S. and China are sort of in this race to develop, you know, the best AI technology. And the U.S. Under Trump in his first term, and then very much so under Biden, and now again under Trump, it has been very aggressive in limiting the export of any technology that could help the Chinese build up their domestic AI industry. And so with some of the recent breakthroughs they've had with DeepSeek, it shows that, you know, they are still really hot on America's heels when it comes to building really, really capable AI technology. And, you know, the U.S. is definitely trying to slow that down. That's another signal here that Trump is actually probably going to continue some of the Biden policies in terms of stopping American companies from selling computer chips and AI tools to China.
Interesting stuff. Lots of developments seem like they're happening every day. Garrett, thanks so much for helping us understand that.
Anytime.
All right, now let's take a quick look at what else is happening around the world. American Mark Fogel was released from a Russian prison today. Fogel had been locked up since 2021 after Russian officials say they found less than an ounce of medical marijuana in his luggage. He said it was prescribed to him for back pain. The White House is hailing today's release as a sign of good relations with Russia. Pope Francis lashes out at the Trump administration over immigration. In a letter to American bishops, the Pope writes that deporting people who come from difficult situations goes against the, quote, dignity of many men and women and of entire families. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, responded by telling the Pope to stick to the Catholic Church. Since last month, more than 170 bombs were found buried beneath a playground in England. Officials are calling them practice bombs from World War II. Those practice bombs, though, can still carry a charge. The working theory is that the bombs were probably left behind by soldiers who were in a hurry to get back home. And an Ebola outbreak in Uganda has killed at least one person, made 9 sick, and put 265 others under quarantine. The latest outbreak is being driven by a strain of the virus for which there is no approved vaccine. Well, before we go, it's time for the future of everything. And tonight, we're looking at the future of warfare, specifically drones. That's coming up next, so stay tuned. In tonight's Future of Everything, we're taking a look at the impact of drones in warfare. But first, space lovers usually look up in the night skies to see stars, comets, or asteroids. But people in California saw an unexpected mirage yesterday after a SpaceX rocket with Starlink satellites was launched. People captured the rocket lighting up the night sky, some capturing that beautiful trail it leaves behind. And tonight, we say goodbye to a legend. That's right. The Duolingo owl has unexpectedly passed away. The app is currently investigating his cause of death, with Duolingo saying, quote, "We're aware he had many enemies, but we kindly ask that you refrain from sharing why you hate him in the comments." Yes, a lot of people hate him. We ask you to take the lesson today if you haven't already in his memory. R.I.P. Duo. Those little reminders never reminded me. That little request is not going to do it either. Finally, tonight, we're taking a look at the new weapons and tactics changing modern warfare. The key technology in Ukraine's years-long fight against Russia, drones. And now the U.S. Army is looking to join in on updating this warfare. Megan Fitzgerald took a trip to Germany to see how the new technology is being used.
War has been raging in Ukraine for nearly 3 years. Ukrainian armed forces desperately trying to hold on to their land. It's a rapidly evolving battlefield and a race to keep on top of the latest technology and tactics. And with no boots on the ground, the U.S. is taking notes.
The character of war is changing at a speed we've never seen before. It's unprecedented. The last 3 years, the lessons we observe from the Ukraine war, and also some from the recent Israeli experience.
Lessons American troops are using in training here in Germany.
Then just pan your camera down.
One key takeaway from Ukraine: drone warfare. Ukrainian soldiers hiding in trenches using drones to not only identify the enemy, but also attack. The machines used on the battlefield in Ukraine and to take the fight to Moscow.
That's going to be the next part of it.
For experts in warfare, it's been a game changer. What is like the single most significant thing that we've learned from the Ukrainians?
Probably for me, it's using drones to spot targets. So as an example, using artillery strikes. What you generally do is fire a couple of rounds on the bearing that was given by the forward air controller, and then based where you see the splash on the ground, you test and adjust, and you then can target the enemy. Now you can just do that with a drone up in the air.
In other words, there's nowhere to hide on the battlefield, but new technology could keep soldiers safer as modern methods merge with traditional warfare.
So now we can look very deep with unmanned sensors and replace tasks that human soldiers used to have to conduct with a lot of unmanned sensors, electromagnetic warfare systems.
Including new, lighter, and more compact communication systems that are allowing soldiers to use vehicles that are smaller, more agile, and messaging systems that are easier to use and more secure. But one of the key breakthroughs for Ukraine, which doesn't have a large Navy fleet, has been its ability to dominate in the Black Sea coast, using marine drones to destroy Russian ships and infrastructure and keeping vital shipping lanes open.
The significance of the maritime capabilities that you've seen is probably more significant than land capabilities at the moment. I mean, what the Ukrainians have been able to do effectively without a Navy and deny the Black Sea to the Russian Black Sea fleet, I mean, that is remarkable.
U.S. soldiers applying lessons that have come at a cost as the world of warfare rapidly evolves. Megan Fitzgerald, NBC News.
Strange times. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Stephen Romo. We'll see you tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.